everyone, welcome to Dear BAMf, the show for PR and marketing pros like you, hosted by Beck Bamberger of BAM. BAM is a communications agency that believes stories move the world. We move stories forward for technology-driven brands that challenge, change, and create entire industries. Today, on the Dear BAMf podcast, we're talking with Alexis Evans, communications lead at Fair.com. A highly accomplished marketing and communications professional, Alexis has represented a diverse collection of clients with specialties including crisis communications, corporate communications, strategic planning, and leadership. Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dear BAMf, the podcast for marketing PR pros such as yourself. We are full-blown into season 2 here, rolling right along. And today we have Alexis Evans from Fair.com on with us today. We're so excited. Thank you for being here, Alexis.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you for a little bit today.
A little bit, and we got some questions. People always have problems.
We all have problems.
Great. We all got problems in this industry. This is the safe space to discuss these exact things, as we were just a second ago. Okay. Yeah. So first off, give us the spiel on Fair. And by the way, Fair.com, Fair, what would you describe and distinguish for people listening?
You know what? I think if you just call us Fair.com, I think that's fine. Or Fair. It's kind of, either or is fine. So basically, the net is Fair is a platform where people can go and purchase used vehicles and set their own lease terms. So you can consider it a vehicle subscription company, or you can consider it, a place, just like a marketplace almost for used cars. And it's very, very simple. And it's things that you can do. You can basically get a car without even leaving your couch, which considering
sounds ridiculous.
It sounds ridiculous and it sounds completely impossible, but it is not impossible. And if you really think about the automotive industry as a whole and how it has evolved, even within the last 5 years, a lot of people are no longer really going into the dealership. They're buying their cars online. They are customizing their vehicles. I want a Q60, a 2020 Q60 Infiniti that's Dodger blue with amazing rims, and it has all of the bells and whistles. And I can't necessarily get that at the dealership in, Torrance.
Yeah.
But if I can customize it and make it all pretty and make it really cool, perhaps they can deliver it to that dealership and then I can go and pick it up.
Yeah, so it's a whole thing.
Who are doing it. Right. You have a lot of people who are ordering their cars online. I'm not saying that dealerships are going away at any point, because personally, I like to go into dealerships and I like to test drive my cars. And, because I'll change my mind. I'm like, oh, I'm going in for one car and I end up, okay, that's not even the car I thought I was going to like. Now I like another vehicle. So dealerships are, as far as I'm concerned, dealerships are here. And that's a great thing because everybody is different. What we do is we provide an opportunity for people to buy used vehicles so that, what ends up happening a lot of times is when you buy a new car, you drive it off the lot, you're stuck in a loan for an extensive period of time. We're talking years. And so what we do is we enable people to purchase a used vehicle using our platform. And it can be a month to month. It can be a 2-year lease. It can be a 3-year lease. Whatever lease is best suited for your current situation. That is what we provide.
That's amazing flexibility.
Yeah, it's flexible, lease terms, and we have a wide variety of vehicles on our platform, and we're continuing to add to it on a almost, it seems like, a daily basis. So it's a very, very cool thing. And when you're done with the vehicle, you contact us. You say, you know what, I no longer need the vehicle, and someone will either pick it up or we will just have to drop it off at a dealership. So we have great relationships with our dealers. And, that's kind of how the process works.
I like it. It makes total sense, especially for someone who maybe doesn't want to have the same car for 6+ years, doesn't want to be stuck in the lease, doesn't want to, like, it makes sense. But I love when we have people on here who talk about something you're like, it almost sounds magical. Like that can happen. I can just tap and this happens. I love that. So I would put this in this category.
It's really cool. And I think about it as, I'm a new mom, right? Or relatively new. I mean, my kid's almost 20 months at this point, but I'm a relatively new mom. And so
things are going to change.
Yeah, things change. I can't necessarily get up and go to a dealership. I have to, but I need a car. I need an SUV, or I need whatever vehicle I need. And I can't go to the dealership and, we're all busy. We're doing a bunch of different things. And it's easier for me to just sit and pick out a car, have the discussion. We decide on a car right then and there, sign our name on the dotted line. And then the car is either delivered or you go and pick it up at a dealership. So it's just very easy. It's very, very easy for people to get a vehicle, a used car.
It's great. It's great. I love it. So for everyone listening, fair.com, help out your fellow PR marketing peer. Check it out. There you go. What are you, Alexis? I know you're a new mom. Well, maybe this will be the answer. We'll see. What are you most proud of accomplishing in this last absurd year?
I think absurd is an understatement,
yeah.
But, I have found myself being able to juggle a little bit better than I thought I could. There are times when I tend to underestimate myself. And, my daughter was born in February of last year, and wow. I was like, okay, now what do I do? And I'm a full-time employee, and I was working for the LA Auto Show at the time, and I'm in school, and I have a daughter, and I'm a wife, and I'm, there are all of these titles that I have, and I haven't managed to, I've had my fair share of freakouts. In fact, I had one a couple days ago, but not in a bad way. It's just a part of life. So for me, I think the biggest accomplishments that I've had is being able to put together a fantastic auto show, which is the Los Angeles Auto Show, put together, be a part of an awesome team and putting together not just the consumer show, but also Automobility LA, which is the press and trade show that takes place before the LA Auto Show. And that's where all of the debuts took place and things along those lines. So to be able to go to not only have my kid, but come back to work, put this thing together with a dynamic, team, have it go off. It went very well. And then, March came around. I ended up leaving the auto show to join Fair, and I'm just going. And it's, for me, the goal is just being able to do it. I don't care how you do it. It doesn't have to be pretty, but for me, the biggest accomplishment is really sitting back and saying, oh my gosh, I've actually done a lot. And it hasn't been easy, but I've made it. That to me is a big accomplishment within the last 12 months.
Oh, cheers to that, Alexis. I love it. I'm raising my little coffee cup to you right now. Cheers to that. And it's then,
just a need.
Yeah. Before we get into the questions here, what's your favorite way to, especially given your career, what's your favorite way to tell a story, especially now?
My favorite way to tell a story. For me, I kind of tend to make things a little bit more personal. And I think when you make things personal, it tends to resonate a little bit better with the person you're telling a story to. Whether it's a pitch or it's an actual, it's a personal story. I think the more personal you are, the more in touch you are with the people you're talking to. That's how I like to tell a story. And then, there's always the F-bombs and whatever that make it more colorful. But
they do. They do indeed.
Obviously not at work, but for me,
we have those at work. We're okay with that.
The idea of making it more personal, and I think that's what helps the story resonate with the folks that you're talking to.
Yes. By the way, I guess here I am downtown. People can probably hear the sirens going on. This is the real world that we're living in.
It is every day.
Every day. I have to double click on the personal piece. We push people, and this is probably for everyone listening too, you need those specific stories. And a story has a beginning and an end and a something to then conclude it. So it bugs me sometimes when people are like, oh yeah, we have this customer. Yeah, it's a story. And I'm like, well, but only X happened. There's like not a actual pull through of, well, before and then during and then after and it concluded. It's just, you got to think of the whole story when you're especially going to tee up a personal narrative, not just a soundbite, because then you're not getting the whole story.
Right.
Anyway.
And it's those personal stories. If you give a solid personal story, a beginning, a middle, an end, and whatever aftermath, someone else can pull pieces from that story and you can make several different pitches or several different conversations based off of different nuggets that were pulled from that initial conversation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%.
Love it. Let's get into our ridiculous list of questions here today.
Let's do
They're
it.
actually not that bad. They're not that bad. Okay. First one. Dear BAMf, there is an industry reporter that always seems to be one step ahead of my client's company news. Oh, we talked about this in our previous season, same kind of thing. Constantly finding an inside source to scoop the news. The reporter is really good at what they do and never posts anything inaccurate, but it's getting frustrating to explain to the client again why we have to give outlet X the exclusive help. What can we do to better work with this reporter and also prevent these internal leaks?
This is a really good question. And it's one that I personally have been through, I've gone through, and I know a lot of other people in my profession have gone through it. From my perspective, I think there's a two-prong approach here. The first is having a conversation with the client about over-communicating internally. With the internal team. Mm-hmm. What tends to happen is we're gonna have a Series A, and it's gonna be X amount of millions of dollars, and you tell the company, and then there's always, especially large companies, right? You never know who people are friends with, whether it's on LinkedIn or literally just friends with people. You never know. And so when you spread that news and you make it widely known internally, it is absolutely bound to get out. There's no way that someone's going to keep their mouth closed, especially if you're like, okay, but we're not going to go public with this announcement for another week. There's no way you can withhold something as awesome as, a Series A for $100 million, withholding that information for a week. So it's very important, I think, first to have the conversation with the client and get a sense in terms of how they are announcing these major nuggets of information that will potentially be turned into media outreach, which will be used for media outreach. So you have that conversation first, because if it's something that the client can go back to the CEO and say, okay, here's the problem that we're having. And you talk to them from a communication standpoint, from a PR standpoint, you say, here's the problem that we're having. Is there a way that we can withhold this information and ensure that just the executive team talks about it? And then maybe an hour before we go live with this release and what have you, then we tell
people.
Right.
Yep.
Is there a way you can do that? Because you can easily, almost, nothing is fail proof, but you can almost avoid that situation happening in the future. So that's one answer. And then the other answer is plan ahead. If you as an agency know that your client, for whatever reason, there are people within those four walls at that company that things tend to leak out, you plan ahead and you say, okay, you're going to talk about the Series A, and we know that X reporter is going to find out probably in the very foreseeable future. We need to put a release out sooner. We can't hold this for a week. We're going to put out a release tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, in 3 days, and have it go. And we're going to talk to X, Y, and Z reporter. We do have a relationship with whatever reporter outlet who constantly gets that information before everybody else. And they can be added to the list of folks who, we're pre-briefing. we can try and work that way, or we push everything out first and then let the reporter find out when everybody else finds out. So there are a wide variety of ways to kind of nip that in the bud so that it doesn't happen so drastically. And then you as an agency, you as a publicist are constantly being frustrated because whatever reporter at whatever outlet seems to be one step ahead. So there, I think there are ways to kind of combat that.
I do like your organization around tightly controlling the internal comms. That's usually the problem in a situation like that. There's a mole, not intentional, by the way. It might not be, it might just be, you're talking with your mom, whatever. And then, who knows? So you have to make explicitly clear, hey, everybody, this cannot go anywhere. This cannot be done. Netflix actually does this when they do their numbers. And I don't know, there's a book that they just came out with, No Rules. And they put on their slide, because people cannot believe that they actually do this from a transparency standpoint. They put on the first slide about announcing their quarterly numbers. If you leak this information, you could be put in jail. Do you understand? Every single one of their quarterly reviews. To this date, it's actually worked, but you put the fear of God in people, and people are like, okay, I got it. I'm going to know this information weeks before the market does. And that actually works. But so I think there's a part of the communication that maybe needs to happen about how serious spreading or talking about it at all is.
Yeah.
Also along with the knowledge of just perhaps knowing that there's probably a mole out there. There's probably something just spilling and people might not know. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They might not know. Because the other aspect to this is that the reporter's doing their job.
Right. You can't fault the reporter. That's the thing.
There's no, let's call the reporter and be nice. No, they're going to do what they're going to do. And clearly they got something that's working for them.
Right.
And so you need to control from the inside.
Yeah. I think, I've been in comms for a while. And I think, I've done the external side of communications. I've done internal, and I've obviously done both at the same time, being in-house. So for me, it is key to have those conversations with, the execs and say, okay, and tell them the situation. Now, if it doesn't bother them, then you're going to have to plan ahead and just move forward. But if it is something that's frustrating, where the same outlet is reporting things over and over and over again, then, you say, okay, maybe is there a way that we can withhold some of this information, or we just tell the 7 people in this room, and then 30 minutes or an hour before we're going to go live with it, you say, hey guys, guess what? You send out an email and you say, hey guys, guess what? So if there is a mole, let's say, and he wants to forward it to that reporter friend that they have, he can go ahead, he or she can go ahead and forward it, but it's too late. By then the release is out. And the reporters that you've, spoken to or whatever, they already know what's going on. And you don't necessarily want to leave this reporter out. You say, I have some news, but we're going to do it under embargo. Now, if they break the embargo, then you know. And you're not going to deal with that again.
Yeah. Some people, we've had questions about that before in here. But I think we answered that one.
Yeah, I think so.
We got it. Cool. Here's our next one. Dear BAMf, I want to be a data-driven marketer, but I feel like there is so much data to digest. How do you parse through the quote-unquote data noise and figure out what is priority? More importantly, how do you explain to your executives what is a priority and what is not?
This is, I love numbers. Let's just start there. I am a big fan of numbers. The media, they obviously love numbers. But as a publicist, you have to think about what really stands out. So, for example, what's more important? Is it the fact that we as a country have more than 7 million cases of COVID, or we've had more than 7 million cases of COVID since this all started? Or if you dig deeper and you see that 2.6, African Americans are 2.6 times more likely to have gotten this particular disease.
Yes.
It's more about filtering the bigger number and kind of getting really, really meticulous within that number. So it's not the 7.7 million people. They are important as a whole collectively, but what within those numbers really, really stand out? Is it the number of minorities who have this collectively? is that number higher than, other people? That's the stuff that really stands out. And I think from a media perspective, those are the things that reporters want to cover. There's a tick at this point. If you go on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, what have you, there is a ticketer at this point that says how many people are, have been infected with this terrible disease.
How many are dead?
And, so that's there. But what isn't there is, of that number, how many people are minorities? How many people are Asian American? How many people are Hispanic, Latino American? How many people are African American people who have this disease? Because I guarantee if you pull those numbers out, they're pretty high.
It's different.
Because of the socioeconomic situations. So they're going to be very, very high, or they're going to be very different. But that's the type of stuff that media want to see. So when you're talking to your exec and you say, the exec's like, we have 8 million customers and we should share that number. And you're like, that's really cool. What about those numbers? What about that 8 million makes us different? Is it that of the 8 million, 7 million are millennials? Is it, or of that 8 million, the 7 million that are millennials are driving whatever vehicle, or they are they're traveling more, or they're doing X, Y, and Z? What about that those 8 million customers is important? 8 million isn't necessarily a massive milestone.
This is, so it's like the contextualizing and what you do with this data. Because this is like an age-old question. I feel like we get this like every month from clients. Oh yeah, we have all this data. Oh yeah. Oh, we have all this stuff. And you're like, but what does it mean? How is there a story? What is the story? So it's just the surface to have whatever data. And I feel for this person who wrote in, because you can't just go to that executive team and be like, well, here's how many website views we had, and here's how many people follow us on Twitter, and here's our track. That is so blah and basic. It's like laughable. So I hope this person isn't going in with that. But instead, hey, look at the trends. Look at what happened. Here's when we break it down in regions and demographics and all these other ways to parse it out. Now that's how you keep your job in marketing, when you can be able to contextualize it. And then what is the story and what is this telling us to then inform us what we should do?
And it's funny. I took an entrepreneurship class. I just finished it, actually. And
was it good?
One of the things that the professor had said was, when you're pitching your business to VCs, they don't care about the number of views that you had on your website. They don't care how many likes you got on an Instagram. None of that stuff matters. What matters is how many people were you able to, if you want to go social media, great. How many people who clicked on that link on your Instagram ended up being converted to customers? Those are the numbers that they care about. They don't care about the pretty stuff. They care about the down and dirty numbers. And if you think about it, those VCs are exactly the same. They have that exact same mindset as the media. Media don't care how many likes you have on a photo. They don't care how many people come to your website. What they care about is how many customers do you have? How many people have stayed? What are those customers doing? What is the trend? What are the trends that you're seeing? That, as far as I'm aware, as far as I'm concerned, I think that's what's really important from a reporter's standpoint. And that's the type of conversation that you should have with your exec, and explain it that exact same way. And you say, this is a really cool number for internal purposes, but we need to dig into those numbers and see from an outsider's perspective, what's really going to make them say, oh, that's really cool. And then they want to learn more.
There's something about, this is just kind of an idea as I'm listening to you, of, we talked about this with the storytelling, like what's your favorite story? How do you tell a story? Is how do you weave the data with compelling stories? Like I'd almost like start, not that I've raised any money, but like I'd start out with a story and then go, oh, and by the way, this little story I just told you ties into the 55 million users we now have across the United States who are doing the same thing as Cindy, things like that. So, anything you can qualify with, again, back to the stories, is going to be just so great.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. I could not agree more.
Yes. So find your stories. writer, the person who wrote us in here. Find your stories. And what is it? What does it tell me to do? I think is the big bottom line.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question for today, Alexis. Dear BAMf, this is another shorter one. My agency keeps telling me media fatigue is really high right now, so don't expect as many reporters to cover you right now. Okay, a little ambiguous about what right now is, because that could easily be 2020. But so the person continues, why is that my problem? How do we overcome that? So this is someone who's sitting probably internal, like you, Alexis, who has an agency of some sort that they're dealing with. What would you say on this? Because you are on the internal side now.
I think
I feel for this person.
I've actually been through this, so I'm just trying to think about what I said. I personally, if the agency is coming to you with that statement, the media, like if they're coming to you with that particular statement, I think from an internal comms standpoint, you need to manage up. And
that's right.
You need to set expectations. The whole world and everybody else, they're covering COVID. And at this point, they don't want to talk about COVID. They want to, they don't want to really talk about anything. There are articles after articles after articles that are coming out about all of this stuff. And there is a lot of media fatigue. So this really cool announcement that we have coming out, we may not get the number of articles, because now we're basing it off of what's happening in the world, right? If something massive happens, the release and the conversations that we've just had with all of these reporters, those articles are on hold until whenever they decide to not be on hold. And so from an internal comm standpoint, it's really about managing up and setting expectations. From a agency standpoint, I look to my agency. When there's media fatigue, I expect for you to come to me and say, okay, there's media fatigue, but here's what we're going to do in order to, here are some alternatives. Come to me with solutions. Don't just come to me with, well, there's media fatigue and that's it. Okay, then what?
Exactly.
That's what, as a company, when you bring on a PR agency, that is what we are paying you for. And so that, not to sound mean or anything, but that's really what we're paying you for. We're paying you to tell us, to, provide us with solutions, alternatives. If we want 10,000 articles, which I know will never happen, but let's just use that outlandish number. If we want X amount of articles, and you're like, that's not going to happen, you need to set those expectations as an agency also. And then you say, we're not going to get 10,000, but here are the things that we think would be great. If we just talk to these 3 reporters, collectively, they have however many readers, UVMs, whatever. And these are the really great relationships that we'll continue to build off of. Then you say, and at that point, I look at it and I say, you know what? I think that makes a lot of sense. So it's really a matter of coming back with alternative solutions. And as an internal person, it's me going to the higher ups and saying, all right, guys, here's the deal. This is going to be a great announcement, but just remember, there's a lot that's going on in the world today. And so we need to manage that. As the comms person, I need to manage your expectations and say, I don't know if we're going to get this amount of articles, but we will more than likely get 4. And then things will start to trickle in as the days and weeks go on.
Exactly. Obviously, this person's a little upset. As they said, why is this my problem? But my interpretation on that is, it's not, but we're all on the same team here. Their win is your company's win and all that good stuff. So it's not your problem, unless they don't come with exactly what you're saying, Alexis. Oh, yeah, there's media fatigue right now, so therefore A, B, and C.
Right.
How about we do X, Y, Z? What do you think about that? We have done it. Exactly.
Yeah, you're entitled to be frustrated. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're definitely entitled to be frustrated. It is extremely frustrating when clients come to you and they have all of these outlandish requests. Yes. And then you have to sit there and you're beating your head against the wall because you're like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But you're also the agency and you don't necessarily want to say no. But as the person who is coming with that request, if you come back to me and say, that's just so not realistic, I personally would respect you a lot more because I am internal, right? Like I'm not dealing with the media as much as I did when I was on the agency side. So I respect you a lot more when you're like, okay, that's a beautiful dream, but I need you to come back down. I need you to join me on this planet we call Earth. And I need for you to like, you know, if you bring me back down from the clouds in like a professional manner, obviously.
Yes, of course.
But if you bring me back down and you say, that's not going to work, but here's what will work, I'll look at you and say, you know what? You're spot on.
We do. This is called the yes anding that we practice. One of our practices at BAM. It's like, yes. And so it's never, no, client, shut them down. No. It's not, oh, but that's a shred better than the shutdown. But the yes anding is, okay, great. Yes. And let's consider the current situation of the media. So how about we take that nugget and we make it into this thing over here? Yeah. Oh, okay. And then we build it from this. And so and that's just good. By the way, that's a technique in improv. That's not like a PR thing. But the yes anding keeps like the energy high and keeps like innovation happening and brainstorming and play and all those great things that lead to great ideas for folks. So that's something. Yeah.
I don't even say yes and, because sometimes that just doesn't work out. But I always
that's true. Okay,
that's true. Yes. However, and then you kind of, because that is what I'm also an English major, right? So this is just me as an English major, but you know, then it kind of changes the dynamic of the sentence, because you're agreeing with the statement. You're like, okay, cool. However, here's the situation, and here's the alternative solution. So you know, yes, you always as an agency, someone who works for an agency at an agency. Yeah, you definitely you don't want to say no all the time, but you also need to, it goes back to the previous question, right? You also want to set expectations. And you also need to shut things down. You don't want to set your agency up to fail.
That is damn true.
And I think that happens a lot, unfortunately. I think, you know, and I've done it. I've been in that situation where, you know, where I've been at an agency and I'm like, oh, this is going to work. And they're like, we want this. And you're like, yes, 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 yes. And then those things don't happen for whatever reason. And then you're left looking at the goals that were set 6 months ago and saying, oh, you didn't do it right. So you set those expectations very quickly.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Oh, Alexis, we tried to solve everything today.
We did.
I think we got a good amount of stuff done.
I do
this
too.
Was good. Thank you for carving out the time. I know how busy you are. Obviously, we talked about this.
No, I appreciate you thinking of me. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you having me on here. And, you know, if I can help out somebody whose shoes I've been in, I am more than happy to do it. And also, if they're into drinking wine after work, go for that. That always helps calm people's nerves.
There you go. Bonus tip. Love it. Thanks again, Alexis.
Thanks for listening to Dear BAMf, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show was created by BAM, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. The music you're enjoying today was composed by Tiffany Dizon, produced by Daniel Kessner, and played by San Diego Symphony's Art of Alon. If you have a tough PR and marketing question you'd like us to answer, write to us at bamtheagency.com/Dear BAMf. Don't forget the F. If you'd like to get notified of our latest episodes, subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.